You probably think that a dynasty roster full of productive players is a shoo-in to contend this year, and you should always contend with that roster. The problem is, if you look at your dynasty roster from a production-based standpoint when you're trying to decide whether you should contend or rebuild or reload this year, a lot of times you end up making the wrong decision. So what we'll do in this video is basically tell you, here's how you look at your dynasty roster and determine if you should contend, reload, or rebuild this year based on the assets that you have on your roster. And I mentioned this because, you know, we see teams all the time that have a bunch of productive players. Like, oh, this guy's got Dak, and he's got Matt Stafford, and he's got Christian McCaffrey, and he's got Alvin Kamara and James Conner, and he's got Devontae Adams, and he's got Tyreek Hill, and he's got, you know, Calvin Ridley on his team, right? Those are a lot of point scorers. That's a sick redraft team, right? Why would that team not be contending in Dynasty?
Because of the value volatility. Because
you are looking at, from a production-based standpoint, and you should be looking at it from a value-based standpoint. Of course, the domain guys are talking about the V word again. Value, value, value. Yeah, well, it's how we win in Dynasty Leagues, and here's how you can look at your roster and see. Again, it's all about taking a value-based approach. Basically this, it costs to contend every year. If you're wanting to contend, then you should have the assets to contend. It's not about having productive guys or guys that score points. It doesn't matter if you have guys that score points. It's about what your roster is going to look like after you contend. If we took the roster that I just named and that team contended, it would be a hard rebuild for 2 years after this year. Guaranteed. And that's what we're trying to avoid. It's a lot harder to get out of a hard rebuild in a league that doesn't trade. And so we want to avoid that. And so we need to look at things based on a value-based approach and not a production-based approach. And so let's look at the 3 different ideas of team trajectories that we can have on a dynasty team at any given time. So going into this year, you're going to be doing one of 3 things for your dynasty team. You are either going to be contending. This means you are a solid contender. You sit in a good place in your league. You have a competitive roster against your league mates. And this year, your primary goal is to win your dynasty fantasy football championship. I would say probably 60 to 65% of dynasty teams that we look at fall into this contending category, where we wouldn't give you a contending grade if we didn't think you could contend. If we didn't think you had production, and not only production, but you had the value to contend. And we'll talk about why you need the value. So contending is the first one. Reloading is basically rebuilding before you have to rebuild, right? This is taking a year. Hey, you've got some promising players, you've got some productive vets, and maybe not a ton of value. Reloading basically is, hey, if you contend this year, you could do it, but it's going to be super risky and you might end up burning your team. Then we're just going to take a year, we're going to stack value, and you're going to worry about value only for 1 year, and next year you are guaranteed to contend. We have a ton of players. I would say reloads make up about 10 to 15% of the teams we review. And then
significant.
So if you've done the math, the other 20%-ish of teams that we review are rebuilds, and rebuilds typically fall into 2 camps here. 1 year reload, one year rebuilds, or hard rebuilds. And basically, the difference between them, the difference between a hard rebuild, a future value, and a 1 year reload are the trajectory and value differences. For example, a future value team is a 1 year rebuild. The difference between a 1 year rebuild and future value and a 2 year rebuild and hard rebuild is the trajectory in value, right? A future value team, it says it in the name. You're going to have value on that team in the future with the assets you have. You have a lot of young players or picks that are only going to accumulate value, and so you have a positive value trajectory for that team. But a hard rebuild has a negative value trajectory. And so, again, deciding whether or not you're contending, reloading, or rebuilding is crucial, and you have to look at it on a value-based approach, not a production-based approach. You basically have to know when in Dynasty you can afford a negative value trajectory. I mean, you would say this probably as much as I would. I mean, we look at teams all the time where we know that if they contend this year, they're going to lose value. It's just part of the game in Dynasty. Because contending costs value or currency or money, and you're going to lose value on productive players over the course of a year. But I think we would all say it's worth losing the value if you have the value to do it. If you have the value to contend, you always should contend. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter. When you're looking at a blueprint, what immediately pops in your mind when you're trying to determine if a team is contending or reloading or rebuilding?
So generally what I like to do is I just look at your starting lineup in terms of value. What does your starting lineup look like, right? Because anyone can start an Alvin Kamara, anyone can start James Conner, anyone can start a Devontae Adams. But in terms of your depth at those respective positions, is Devontae Adams your wide receiver 3, or is he your wide receiver 5? Is your wide receiver 2 Terry McLaurin, or is your wide receiver 2 JSN, right? And that's really going to be directly tied to what do your flex spots look like specifically? How many guys can you flexibly, comfortably put into your flex spots? If you've got your flex spots filled out, or maybe one of them's a little bit shaky, and then your depth is in shambles in a 12-team start 10, then I'm going to be a little worried about your outlook. Maybe half of your team are a bunch of aged out veterans who are productive, and their outlook for the next year or two is pretty solid, but they're not going to gain value. Their production upside is capped. In fact, their production upside is no upside at all. It's all down from here. It's all downhill. So if that's the case, then we're going to potentially be looking at a reload situation where we want to kind of capitalize on the value that you do have in your productive assets remaining, go sell them off to contending teams who do have enough value insulation, locking down their cornerstone assets. That's another thing too. I look at your cornerstone assets. If your cornerstones are few and far between, then chances are pretty solid that you're going to be a reload. Rarely do I see a team that I give a well-rounded archetype and they only have 2 or 3 cornerstones. What's a cornerstone? It's a cornerstone we essentially define as a guy who's being drafted in the top like 6-ish rounds of Dynasty startup drafts, and they're not 30 years old, right? And they have their 3-year outlook essentially is going to be pretty positive over the next like 2 to 3 seasons. You know that you can rely on them for the foreseeable future, right? So just because Amon-Ra St. Brown is pushing 26 or Nico Collins is going to be 27 next offseason doesn't mean that they're not cornerstone assets, because their outlook for the foreseeable future is going to be pretty positive in terms of production and decent enough value insulation, right? So that is definitely something that I like to look at. Depth is going to depend on like what your league format is going to be. So that will carry weight in some leagues where it's not going to carry really anything, if at all, in other formats. This is one of the things that I recommend to a lot of people consistently, depending on their league format. You know, if you're a 12-team start 10, like I mentioned earlier, that depth is going to matter. How many flex options do you have on your bench? If you have a plethora of them, just an absolute ton of and your depth score is like 6+, then I might even have you package some of those guys to raise your flexible upside. If you're a 10-team start 8 and you have a depth score of like 6 or 7, I'm going to have you literally package almost all of that depth and maximize your production upside as well in your starting lineup. And that'll be one of the top recommendations I have for your team is, hey, you have too much depth on your roster. Think about this. You're only starting 80 players on a weekly basis in your league. 80. So in a 10-team start 8, I mean, that is the first 8 rounds. You're starting every single one of those guys. After that, it is quite literally meaningless. So if you think about it, depth in that situation doesn't really matter unless you're talking about injury insurance. But outside of that, again, if you're only starting 80 guys a week in your league format, then upside is absolutely everything when it comes to actually winning a championship in those league formats. So keep that in mind. It does depend on whether you're a 10-team, an 8-team, a 12-team, a 14-team, and those flex options. How many flex spots do you have? Are you in a 12-team start 8, start 9, start 10? That will impact, again, some of our outlooks. We have done teams where we've seen like a 12-team start 8 or a 10-team start 8 where we are like, yo, if this was a 12-team start 10, he's reloading.
Yep.
But again, that depth doesn't matter as much. So if your last flex spot is your choice of Adams, Godwin, Tyreek Hill, and James Conner in a 12-team start 8, but you don't have really any depth outside of that, but you have 4 or 5 solid cornerstones, we're like, okay, you can probably go ahead and compete this season, and we'll list you as a well-rounded, and you don't have to reload. But again, make sure that look at the draft capital as well. That's another thing that we like to look at significantly. If you're a team that doesn't have a very good outlook and you have all your current draft capital, we're like, okay, that's good. If you're a team that looks like they're pretty well-rounded in terms of like production upside, but they don't have any future picks in 26 or 27, we're like, hey, try to compete this year. Maybe you can even compete next year. Don't move any more future picks because we want to avoid a hard rebuild. But since you don't have your future picks in the near future, then we probably want you to compete this season because you want to keep that pick from being as high as possible. You want it to be as low as it possibly can be, so that you're not giving up a ton of value since you already traded it away. So that's also very, very important to note.
And so again, if you want to know whether or not you're rebuilding, reloading, or contending, Nathan and I can take a look at your Dynasty team for you. We can give you our opinion, and we can give you a plan so that if you're doing one of those 3 things, which you will be, here are the moves you should make in your Dynasty season. You definitely don't want to go into your Dynasty season making the wrong move because it could end up costing you big time. You could end up in a hard rebuild. So you can get a blueprint for free at flockfantasy.com/domain. If you use code domain, sign up for the annual Mother Flocker tier. Again, Nathan and I will give you a free team blueprint. We'll take a full look at your team. It's a comprehensive breakdown of your entire Dynasty team. Plus, you're going to have access to the Discord afterwards where we'll help you make all of these moves and follow through with your plan. You'll also get Infinite Blueprint, which we'll talk about here in a second. We actually are going to reveal the big Infinite Blueprint announcement here in a second on this video, and so stay tuned for that. But you'll get all that with the annual Mother Flocker tier with code domain at flockfantasy.com/domain. I want to do a couple things before. We're going to talk about what you should do with contending, reloading, and rebuilding teams this year. But first, I want to talk about the value part of this, right? We talked about value, and I want to circle back to it. You have to look at things on a value-based trajectory. And when you're looking at your Dynasty team, how can you measure value? How can you track your value? Because the best teams in Dynasty, the high-end, well-rounded, and elite value teams, they have this in common. They're all heavily contending. They have a positive value trajectory, and some of their value is usually in the top 5% of what we see. And so how do you get to that team? You have to be able to track your value, and you have to be able to look at value versus production. A good way to track your value, if you're already familiar with this, is with our Infinite Blueprint, where every month what it does is we use our domain value algorithm. I made that word up. And it's basically just an equation. I studied math in college. I've worked a lot on this. It's an equation that basically tells us, it quantifies your value in Dynasty Fantasy Football. You see other sites that do this, like Keep Trade Cut or other, even on the Flock site, we have some values, whatever. We do it better. And we put it on the Infinite Blueprint. And so basically every month you guys get this. It's different than the positional grades where Nathan and I give our opinions and talk about value on your blueprints. Infinite is just value, right? And so it's an objective, quantifiable measure of your value on your team. And you can see a lot of people have sent us examples. Hey, I had an Infinite Blueprint in April, and now my Infinite Blueprint says I am way higher, and I've actually moved up 2 tiers in my Infinite Blueprint. And that is exactly what Infinite is designed to do. It's designed to track the overall value of your portfolio on your Dynasty team. And so the best way to do this in season, we thought, would be to just give you Infinite every single week. How about we just do it every single week?
Yeah, because it just makes the most sense in our opinion, because guess what? Dynasty, while value does matter and it's vital to you having long-term success, we all have to score points every single week to actually win a championship. So when it comes to deciding who you want to start, who you want to sit, again, our starting lineup has changed from value in the offseason to who are you actually flexing every single week? Who has the best production upside any given week, depending on their weekly situation? When you're looking at other viable flex options off your bench, here are some other options. If this guy's questionable and he might be trending to not potentially starting, there's a couple of flex options there that we're going to give you as like alternates in case something does happen where he's announced to not play, right? If Jonathan Taylor isn't playing, is DJ Giddens going to be a viable option? If Michael Pittman isn't playing, is Josh Downs going to be like an absolute must start or something like that, So another thing that I think is super important is, again, sometimes this doesn't matter for every single team, because maybe you're rebuilding and you're like, geez Louise, I don't really care who I'm starting every single week. I'm just kind of throwing in who I can, because I'm already so depleted of value and production that I'm building for next season. So I'm looking to next season. Well, that's what I'm really excited about too, because I want to give you guys a player of the week in terms of like college prospects that are looking to declare in 2026, right? We're basically going to be tracking all year while the college season is going, right? A lot of people wait until the end of the season to do college prospect analysis. We've got us and Ryan Bread, who's working on the bakery, following these college prospects throughout the season. So if you're rebuilding sooner rather than later, or hey, maybe you're heading into the season and you're rebuilding, we're going to be helping you out in terms of like, hey, this is what you need to be looking for from a college prospect perspective, and this is what you should look forward to. What is this bakery grade for Garrett Nussmeier really going to turn out to be, depending on what his production is for the first couple of weeks and what that projects out to be for the rest of the season? How's Jeremiah Love panning out? How are some of the risers of the wide receiver position really doing this season? Some of the guys that maybe we hadn't even named in our way too early 2026 projections and rankings that we did this past summer, right? This is some of the stuff that really matters, because again, those teams that are rebuilding that aren't competing this season, good chance you guys probably have a significant amount of draft capital in 2026. So that is going to matter when we're looking at those specific prospects. We kind of want to get a little sneak peek into what we're going to be looking at in the offseason.
And so again, like Nathan mentioned, we have your recommended lineup, your flex options with the green light start sit tool built into the weekly Infinite Blueprint that we'll give to you during the season, the player of the week. We also have a value grades. Like I mentioned, you can track the value of your team week over week, depending on how the Dynasty market is moving, right? We have marketplace for you, guys you should target, guys you should look to offload, so that's going to be kind of the same as Infinite is now. And then in combination with your value grades and your record, we're going to give you an in-season verdict. It's not going to tell you whether you should rebuild, contend, or reload, because really only Nathan and I can like take a really long look at your team and do that. But what this is going to give you is an in-season verdict. So are you in a solid place with your roster? Are you in a shaky place with your roster and your record? Or are you in trouble? And so it's going to give you that as well. And so basically everything we've talked about, contending or reloading, making a decision on your roster, what your value grades are doing, your risers, your fallers, targets, offloads, all of this is going to be given to you weekly along with start-sit analysis for your Dynasty Fantasy Football team. This is basically just something we were like, hey, we can give them a better tool. Why don't we just give them the better tool for free? And so basically what we're doing is if you are already a member and you're already on Infinite Blueprint, you're already signed up for weekly. If you're on the Infinite Blueprint program, we're not going to give you monthly updates. We're going to give you weekly updates for the entire season. And if you haven't signed up already, you can go, and again, annual Mother Flocker tier with code DOMAIN. You have to use code DOMAIN to unlock this. But if you use code DOMAIN, we're going to offer this to you for free with your membership as well. So you can sign up, you can get everything with the site, you can get a free team blueprint, and you're going to get 17 blueprints in season every week, telling you, giving you different moves to make, giving you your value grades, giving you your lineup. It's guys, I don't know what else we could give you in terms of value. We are trying to give you the best value we can. It's actually stupid for us to offer this to you because it takes a lot logistically to send out as many blueprints as we do, and to also, even though we have the value algorithm, even though we have a pool of players that we can pull from to give you targets and offloads, it's still a lot. And so take advantage of it. Again, you can get it over on the site. I've got the link pinned in the comment as well if you want to take advantage of this. But let's wrap it up with this. Some very practical ways that we can optimize our different types of dynasty teams. I'll start with contending teams. Don't offload all your youth on contending teams. Okay? Even though you're going to lose value year over year, it doesn't mean you have to lose all your value. So don't offload your youth. You can buy cheap, productive vets. Keep your elite cornerstones up top to anchor your entire value portfolio, and then buy cheap, productive vets to fill into your flex spots, which brings me to my third point. Optimize your flex spots. Again, dynasty leagues are won in your flex positions, and so if you take time and actually optimize those guys, if you get high upside flex guys, you will contend, and you don't necessarily have to break the bank to have high upside flex guys. Look for the cheapest possible high upside flex guys to win your fantasy football league. And finally, move your first in season. Do not move your first before the season. Pick the guy when they're actually producing and buy them with your first. And also, don't trade your first until you know you're contending. Anything could go wrong. What if you get super unlucky? You're first in points against, and you end up, 6-10 because you got unlucky.
And injury always messes stuff up too. So
moving your first before the season is stupid. But for contending teams, you can move it in season and go get somebody that can also, again, upgrade your flex spot.
Yeah. So reloading teams, just make sure that you keep the assets that allow you to reload and not rebuild. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you have Jamar Chase on a reload, don't trade away Jamar Chase for a bag of chips. Like, don't down tier super far from him. You don't really need to make that deal. I mean, I guess you could down tier to CeeDee Lamb plus a significant premium on top, but don't go any further than that. Like, maintain some of your top cornerstone assets because those are already few and far between enough that we're telling you not to contend, and we're telling you to just fold for a season. It's supposed to be quick. A reload is supposed to be one season, and then you're back and looking to contend the following year. So make sure that you're buying situational dips. Buy the dip on guys that get injured in the middle of the year, right? One of the best reload targets last season was a Rashee Rice in the middle of the season. One of the best targets at the running back position was Josh Jacobs at the beginning of the year, and he actually, you could end up selling him at a premium to a contender later in the season because the touchdowns started coming, right? Don't worry about your starting lineup, though. Again, if we are telling you to reload, that means that your value is rough enough, probably at wide receiver, that you should probably be investing in wide receiver. So don't be so desperate to offload production that you're trading away Jamar Chase for a way less productive guy. Like, you do not want to be doing that. Maintain your top cornerstone assets. But some of your mid-range productive assets, like a Kyron Williams as a reload, maybe you have a Josh Jacobs or a James Cook or a Chase Brown as a reload. Maybe you have A.J. Brown even as a reload in the middle of the season. You know that those guys probably can't gain any more value than they already currently have. So go ahead and just move them at a premium while they produce in the middle of the season, and go get some of those value-insulated, high-value upside receiving assets specifically that heading into next offseason are going to overall increase the value portfolio of your team, so that the outlook of your roster heading into 2026 will be much more positive than it is heading into this season.
And finally, rebuilding teams here, a couple things. Make as many trades as you can. This is more balls to the wall. You can be selective as a reload. Again, you're contending next year, and all you have to do is build up a little value, and you're going to be good. With rebuilding, you are going for it. Make as many trades as you possibly can. Down tier as much as you can with your top end players. If you do have them on a hard rebuild, you are going to have to down tier from them. Don't think positionally at all similar to a reload. A reload, you might think a little bit positionally because you're 1 year away from contending, right? So you might even have that in the back of your mind, like, yeah, you know, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for me to do this. It might be hard for me to move off this guy before next year. Rebuilding doesn't matter. Don't even think about that. Do not tank for the 101 on a rebuilding team. Doesn't matter if you have productive assets. Just rebuild. Just focus on value. You're not going to, even though you get a value win drafting at the 101, the difference in value between the 101, 102, 103 when it's all said and done compared to the amount of value that you could potentially lose trying to tank and not have any production for the 101, it's not worth it. Do not tank for the 101. Just rebuild, just gain value, and finish where you finish. And so hopefully that all makes sense. Again, our brand new weekly Infinite Blueprint will start week 1. We already have it available for you. We're already ready to run it for you. And again, it's going to give you everything you need every single week so that you know who you're starting, who your flex guys are, who your rises and fallers are, what your value grades are, who you should be moving, who you should be targeting. I mean, I don't know how, again, I hope you enjoy this. We really hope you enjoy it. What we're trying to do is bring you the best possible product. And again, come join the community where you get the best possible product. It directly supports us, but we also directly support you back in the sense that you get a free team blueprint. You're going to get free infinite blueprint with it. And again, that's with the annual Mother Flocker tier with code domain. You'll unlock this weekly infinite blueprint you'll get throughout the entire season. Again, use code domain, the annual Mother Flocker tier, and you're going to get everything we have. But we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you later.